The night had no stars, no moon, no glimmer, no trace of light in the heavens. The Pacific stretched outward in every direction like an endless black mirror. Still and breathless, the little schooner barely moved, becalmed for days under a haze that clung to the water like an illness. I stood alone at the tiller, my shipmates a pair of weathered men and a young deckhand snoring in their bunks forward. Behind me, in the cramped cabin, the captain lay half asleep in his cot, trusting the sea to hold us steady. We had learned patience on these waters. But patience is one thing in daylight. In the dark, silence breeds suspicion. That was when I heard it. "Schooner, ahoy!" The words came out of the night, low and rough, as if scraped over stone. My body locked up. For a long second I thought I'd dreamed it. But then the voice rose again, clearer, throaty, and disturbingly wrong. "Schooner, ahoy!" I swallowed hard, then called back, "Hello?" The reply came with unnatural calm. "Do not be afraid. I am only an old man." Something in the pause between words chilled me more than the words themselves. My instincts, 40 years of coastal work, storms, drunks, shipwrecked sailors told me something was off. People don't sound like that. Not even with thirst. Not even with hunger. Then come alongside. I barked, more sharply than I intended. "If you need help, show yourself." "No," the voice croaked back. "I cannot. It would not be safe." My pulse thudded in my ears. Safe? What did he mean by that? I leaned over the rail, straining to pierce the mist. Nothing. Just the faint drip of water against hull. The oppressive silence pressing against the schooner. "What isn't safe?" I demanded. But no answer came. Only the faint splash of in or somewhere in the dark. Retreating, I kicked my heel against the deck boards. Hard, waking the captain. Then I rushed to the binnacle, yanked out the lamp, and cast a beam of yellow light across the water. For an instant I thought I saw a shoppy boat. A figure, but then it vanished. I might have imagined it. Still, I heard the faint splash of oars retreating deeper into the fog. "What's the matter?" The captain's voice came behind me, gravelly and annoyed. I told him quickly. He listened, frowning, then cupped his hands to his mouth and called out into the mist, "Boat ahoy!" For a moment there was nothing. Then, far off, came the faintest reply, ragged and reluctant. The sound of oars followed. "Hide the lamp," the voice ordered. I cursed under my breath, but the captain nudged me to obey. Against my better judgment, I lowered the light behind the bulwarks. The oars drew nearer. Then, silence again. "Come alongside," the captain called evenly. "There's nothing to fear here." "Promise," the voice rasped, "that you will not show the light." "Why not?" I demanded. "What are you hiding?" A long pause. Then, "Because," and it broke off. The captain laid a hand on my shoulder. "Let me handle this." He leaned over the rail. "Listen, mister. You've turned up in the middle of nowhere. No warning. Whispering about danger. You say you're alone, but how the hell are we supposed to know that if you won't let us see you?" The oars moved again, retreating. The voice came back, faint and miserable. "I am sorry. I did not mean to trouble you. I am hungry, and so is she." "She?" the captain asked, but the voice had already grown distant, scattered by the fog. We might have let it in there, had it not been for the tone of those words. Hunger. A woman. Something in the captain shifted was a hard man, but not heartless. He shouted for the boat to return, promising no light, no harm. Minutes later, the oars came close again. When they stopped, the voice spoke once more, barely holding back a shudder of longing. "I cannot come closer. I dare not. But, if you would give us food." The captain hesitated. then hurried below. He came back with an armful of bread, tins, and dried meat. He tried to pass them over the side, but the unseen figure recoiled. Not like that. Please, float them. So we loaded a box and shoved it off with a boat hook. Out in the dark, the oars splashed softly, and then a cry of relief. God reward you. The voice choked, hoarse with gratitude. May he bless you for your kindness. And then the sound of rowing, fading once again into the unseen. I leaned against the rail, unsettled to the marrow. The captain muttered, "Strangest damn thing I've ever come across." I nodded, staring into the dark. He'll be back. He has to be. And I need to know why he fears the light. And deep inside, though I tried to dismiss it, one thought repeated in my head like a warning. That was no old man. The hours crawled by. Neither the captain nor I could sleep. We sat in silence on the deck, lantern extinguished, listening to the vast emptiness of the Pacific. The boy stirred once in his bunk, mumbling, but the other two men remained dead to the world. It felt obscene that they could sleep so soundly while the sea held such secrets close at hand. By the third hour, my eyes burned from the strain of staring into the dark. I was about to give in and crawl below when the sound reached Uzors again. Faint but steady. The captain touched my arm. He's back. Sure enough, a call rose from the fog. Schooner ahoy. The voice was firmer now, strengthened by food and water, yet still carrying that uncanny tone like something imitating human speech, but not quite belonging to it. That you? The captain asked. Yes, came the reply. Forgive me. I left suddenly. There was great need. The captain leaned over the rail. And the lady? How is she? A long pause. When the voice returned, it was brittle. She is grateful. Soon she will be more grateful still. In heaven. My throat tightened. I shot the captain a glance. But he ignored me, keeping his voice even. You speak in riddles. Stranger, who are you? What happened to you out here? For a time, there was only the rhythm of water against wood. Then the voice came again, heavy with weariness. We, she and I, have spoken. We thought to go out of the world silently, without troubling another soul. But tonight feels ordained. It is God's will that someone should know what befell us. I leaned forward, barely breathing. The captain said softly, Then tell us. The oars dipped once more, then ceased. Out of the hush, the confession began. My name matters little now. The voice said, Months ago, my fiancée and I set sail from Newcastle aboard the freighter Horizon Star. She was bound for San Francisco. We were to marry upon our arrival. The man's voice trembled, and I could hear him fighting for composure. But fate turned cruel. South of the equator, a storm struck us with such fury the ship lost her masts. She began to take water. When the sea calmed, the crew, cowards all, abandoned ship. They lowered the lifeboats and rowed away, leaving us below deck, gathering what belongings we could. By the time we rushed topside, they were specks on the horizon. We were left alone, adrift. The captain cursed under his breath. I could only listen, stunned. We built a raft from the wreckage. A little water, a little biscuit. We prayed for rescue. For days we drifted in mist until the sound of breakers reached our ears. At dawn we found ourselves in a vast lagoon, surrounded by a haze so thick the world seemed to end beyond it. And there, looming before us, was a ship. He paused, and his voice dropped low. We thought God had saved us. We fell on our knees in gratitude. But when we climbed aboard, we found no living soul, only silence and fungus. The word clung to the air like a curse. I felt my skin crawl. What do you mean? Fungus? The captain asked. The voice grew husky. as though ashamed. The decks were covered in it. Gray masses, some no larger than a coin, others rising into hideous nodules taller than a man. The ropes were slimed with it. The cabins were blotched with it. A stench of decay clung to everything. Yet, we were desperate. There was water aboard, stores enough to last. So we cleaned what we could and made that ship our shelter. A heaviness settled over me. I could almost smell it. That damp rot. At first, we scraped it away. It returned overnight. We soaked the patches with carbolic, thinking to kill it. By week's end, the growth came back stronger. It spread as if angered by our efforts. And then, his voice cracked. One morning, my beloved woke to find a patch growing on her pillow, close to her cheek. I muttered a curse. The captain's jaw tightened. She begged me to move us ashore. The voice continued. There was land nearby, choked with the same gray blight. Still, we searched, and by God's mercy we found a strip of ground where the fungus would not grow white sand. Fine and strange. There we pitched tents, bringing what supplies we could. A pause. Oars knocked softly against wood. For a time, we knew happiness again. We believed we had beaten it. But then, the first mark came upon her skin. The words turned my stomach. I could see it in my mind's eye, a gray spot on a soft hand, spreading like a stain. It was small, no bigger than a mole. We washed it, disinfected it. The next day it returned. Then she saw the same upon my face. The voice trembled with grief. We tried not to speak of it. We tried to believe it could be fought. But God help us, the thing had already claimed us. We were marked. The silence stretched. Even the sea seemed to hush. And then came the hunger. The voice whispered. I stiffened. She confessed first. She had tasted it just a piece. Small and gray. I begged her never to touch it again. She promised. In tears. But not long after. I felt its lure. The growth brushed my lips. And suddenly I was consumed with craving. I devoured it like a beast. Until shame brought me back to myself. The taste lingers still. My stomach clenched with revulsion. Since then, the voice rasped. We have fought the urge. But it is in us now, as surely as the gray stains that spread across our flesh. We are no longer man and woman. We are something else, something that should not be. The oars dipped again. I realized the boat was turning away. Wait, the captain called. You can't leave it at that. What about her? Where is she now? She lies beyond, on the island. The voice answered. We thought to keep her hidden from your sight. She is weak and changing. We are both changing. The words faltered, then ended in a broken whisper. God bless you for your kindness, and forgive us for what we are becoming. And with that, the sound of rowing faded once more into the vast, impenetrable mist. The captain and I stood frozen. Neither of us spoke for a long while. When at last he did, his voice was grim. That man's story is the most dreadful thing I've heard in all my years at sea. I nodded, throat dry. The truth clawed at me in ways I could not explain. The old man's words rang of madness, yet too sincere to dismiss. Somewhere out there, beyond the mist, was an island, a woman, and a plague that devoured both body and soul. And as much as I wanted to believe we'd heard the last of it, deep down I knew he would return. And when he did, we would hear the rest. The dawn came sluggishly, heavy with haze. The sea was flat and dull, reflecting the pale light like tarnished metal. I lingered on deck long after the others woke, unable to shake the voice from my head. The old man's words clung to me as though they had seeped into my skin. The captain joined me with a tin of coffee in hand. He drank silently, his eyes fixed on the mist. Finally, he muttered, "He'll be back. A man doesn't unburden himself halfway, unless he means to finish the tale. I didn't answer, but my gut told me he was right. And sure enough, that evening, as the sun sank into the gray haze, the sound of oars drifted once more across the water. "Schooner, ahoy!" This time, the voice was weaker, cracked with strain. My blood ran cold. The captain called out, "We hear you. Come nearer." "No," the voice groaned. "I dare not. But I must tell you what came after." And so the tale continued. For a time, the man said, we clung to hope. We scraped the patches from our skin, burned the cloth that touched them, prayed for deliverance. But it was useless. Each morning, the spots returned, first small, then spreading, hers upon her hands and arms, mine across my face and chest. It was not only the growth, but the hunger. At first we resisted. We lived on biscuit, on what little fish I could catch. But our bodies weakened. And the fungus, it called to us. Its stench, its sweetness, it filled our dreams. One morning, I found her crouched by a nodule near the tent, eating with trembling hands. I tore her away. She wept, ashamed, swearing never again. But I saw the truth in her eyes. The desire was already in her blood. The voice trembled, breaking, and soon after, I too gave in. Not once, not twice. The taste was beyond description, sweet and vile, foul and yet irresistible. God forgive us, we were becoming its slaves. The captain swore under his breath. I gripped the rail, knuckles white. The sea itself seemed to lean closer to listen. The voice pressed on. The marks spread faster after that. Her thumb was nearly gone, replaced by gray lumps that pulsed beneath the skin. My cheek, when I touched it, it felt soft, spongy, no longer flesh. We stopped speaking of a cure. We stopped speaking of rescue. All we spoke of was how long we had left as ourselves. A month passed, then another. She weakened, but still smiled for me, still called me her love. We tried to pretend we were human. We cooked what food we had, sat by our little tent, and spoke of the life we would never see again: marriage, children, a home, dreams dissolving into rot. The words wavered into silence. Then he sighed, low and hollow. It was during the third month I realized we would never leave that place. The white sand patch grew smaller by the week, the fungus creeping closer, enclosing us like a prison. The lagoon water turned foul. Fish avoided it. Hunger gnawed at us. And though we tried to resist, we found ourselves stealing out at night to feed on the very thing that consumed us. Each bite quickened the growth, yet each bite we craved. The captain called across the water, his voice tight. "Why didn't you take the boat and leave the island?" A hollow laugh echoed back. "Because by then, Captain, we feared we would not be welcomed anywhere. Look upon yous if you could. No port would admit us. No ship would take us. We were unclean. More than that, we were dangerous. For what if the blight spread? What if we carried it to others? Better we remained upon that cursed shore, hidden in the mist, until the end." My heart sank. The logic was brutal, but it rang true. The voice faltered, then steadied once more. It was the fourth month when despair turned to horror. I came upon her at dawn, crouched in the shadows of the tent, eating greedily from a slab she had torn from one of the larger growths. Her lips were gray, her teeth stained. When she saw me, she cried out, not in shame this time, but in rage that I would stop her. She clutched the foul thing to her chest like a starving animal. I wrenched it away, but not before she bit me. A bite, gentle, accidental, but enough to leave a mark. It bled little, yet the wound closed in hours, sealed over by a thin gray film. That was the moment I knew there would be no turning back. I shuddered. The image of it gnawed at me. The sea around us was still. the mist dense, as if it too feared the story. The old man's voice grew fainter. We began to change in ways I dare not fully speak. Our bodies weakened, yet parts of us grew harder, swollen, stiff. She cried at night, begging me to hold her. But even in my arms I felt the wrongness. Her skin no longer yielded. Her breath smelled of damp stone. Still, I loved her. God help me. I loved her even then. Together, we prayed. We begged for deliverance, for death, for anything but what we faced. But heaven was silent. Only the gray growth answered, quivering and pulsing as if it knew our prayers were futile. The captain's voice was harsh when he spoke. And now? What of her now? The reply was almost a sob. She is less each day. She speaks, but her words are slurred, her tongue heavy. She weeps, though her eyes no longer shed tears, only damp streaks of gray. She clings to me, but I feel her grip weakening, not from lack of strength, but because her fingers are no longer fingers. They have become something else. The last words dissolved into silence. I could not breathe. I stared out into the mist, desperate to see something, anything, yet praying I would not. Finally, the voice came again, broken and raw. You ask why I fear the light. That is why. For if you were to see us, you would curse the day you laid eyes upon us. We are no longer fit for this world. Better you hear only the voice of what remains. Then the sound of oars, slow and unsteady, drifted away once more into the infinite haze. I turned to the captain. His face was ashen. What do you make of it? I whispered. He shook his head. I make of it only this. If half of what he says is true, we are listening to the death rattle of two souls consumed by something beyond nature. And God help us if whatever it is finds its way to another shore. The words clung to me like a shroud. I knew then the old man would return again. He had not yet spoken the whole truth. And the worst was still to come. The next night came heavy with clouds, the air damp and oppressive. Sleep would not take me. I sat with the captain on deck again, waiting, both of us pretending we weren't. When the sound of oars finally drifted from the dark, neither of us spoke at first. We simply braced ourselves. Then it came, the voice. Schooner, ahoy. It was thinner now, as if dragged from a throat not meant for words. The captain leaned over the rail. We're here. Tell us. A long pause followed. Then the weary confession began once more. We thought hunger would kill us first. The biscuits dwindled to crumbs. The tins rusted empty. I tried to fish the lagoon, but the waters had grown foul, lifeless. Beyond, in the open sea, I caught some, but rarely. We starved, and with starvation came weakness, and weakness led us back to the growth. God help us, we turned to it fully. At first small pieces, then larger. We tried to pretend it was food, tried to cook it, disguise it, make it less vile, but it was no use. We devoured it raw, like beasts, and the more we ate, the faster it claimed us. The voice cracked, and I thought for a moment it would stop, but then it pressed on, bitter and unstoppable. The marks spread over her arms, her face, her chest. I saw her shoulders twist, her skin thicken into spongy lumps, her voice slurred, her tongue heavy with grayness. And still she clung to me, still whispered my name at night, though her lips were no longer lips. And my reflection in the lagoon told me the truth. My skin sagged in folds of fungus. My hands, they were no longer mine. Fingers swollen, fused in places, damp and soft like rotting bread. My own voice, even now, is not what it was. Do you hear it? Do you understand? I am not a man speaking to you, I am something else. Remembering how a man once spoke. The captain's face was rigid, but his jaw worked as though fighting to keep steady. I could not speak. The voice sank lower, husky with grief. We had spoken of escape, of taking the boat and trying for the open sea. But by then, escape was a lie. The white sand patch grew smaller with every sunrise, the fungus closing in like a tide. We would have carried it with us anyway, spreading the plague beyond the mist. No, our place was there. Our fate was there. One morning I woke to find her crouched at the water's edge, staring into the rippling surface. I touched her shoulder, and she turned to me. And for the first time, I recoiled. Her eyes, God forgive me, were gray. The white's gone. Her gaze soft and spongy, as if the fungus itself peered out from within. She wept when she saw my horror, and still she clung to me, begging me not to leave her, as if I could, as if there was any world left to go to. The sea was silent around us, our schooner a fragile speck in the vastness. I realized I was gripping the rail so tightly my hands ached. The voice continued, drifting and broken. We told ourselves it was only flesh, only the body, that the soul would endure. We prayed together, knelt in the sand, begged for mercy, but each prayer felt thinner than the last, as though heaven itself recoiled from us. And then came the worst of it. Not the hunger, not the growth, but the desire. The captain frowned. Desire? Yes. The voice rasped. The craving for more. For it to cover us fully. To give in. To stop resisting. There is a moment when the fight breaks. When the thought of surrender feels like peace. I saw it in her. She smiled through her tears, whispering that it would be easier if we stopped struggling. That perhaps, once consumed, we would be at rest. My stomach turned. I held her, and in my arms I felt her chest rise and fall with the rhythm of something not her own. A pulsing, like the breath of the growth itself. I kissed her brow, though it was damp and wrong, because she was still mine, and I knew then we would go together. The voice faltered, trembling into silence. For long minutes, there was nothing but the lap of water against the schooner's hull. Then it returned, hushed and almost reverent. We rationed what little food remained. A week ago, the last biscuit was gone. Since then, I caught 3 fish. 3. Enough to delay death, but not to deny it. The rest, we fed on what fed on us. And day by day, the line blurred. We were no longer 2 souls fighting against the gray tide. We were part of it, becoming what we despised, even as we depended on it. The words came ragged now, each one dragged from deep within. I have watched her fade, her voice, her smile, her touch all slipping away, and yet she still clings to me, calling me by name, even as her lips crumble into something unfit to speak. She is less than human, but she is still my beloved. That is the cruelty of it. To love what is no longer lovable. To hold what no longer should be held. The captain called out, "Hoarse, why come to us? Then, why tell us this?" A long silence. Then, slowly, the answer, "Because you must know. Because someone must carry the memory of what we were. We will not see another dawn as man and woman. Tonight may be our last, as voices still our own. Tomorrow, the tide will claim us fully. I would not vanish without leaving behind the truth. Let it be known that we were, once, human, that we fought, that we prayed, that we loved, and that in the end, love was not enough." The oars dipped again, slow, mournful. The voice called out one last time that night, barely more than a whisper, "God bless you, for your kindness." And then it was gone, swallowed by the mist. I stood frozen beside the captain. He drew in a long breath, exhaling through his nose, and muttered, "If half that tale is true, we've spoken with the damned. Not demons, but men and women turn to things worse than demons. Tell me, what sin deserves that punishment?" I had no answer. Only silence. The mist thickened around us, the sea shuddering faintly as though uneasy with what it carried. I knew the voice would return again, and when it did, we would hear the final truth, their last words before the end. And God help us both. I dreaded it as much as I longed for it. The final night settled over us like a shroud. The sea was a black mirror. The mist pressed close, heavy and low, muffling every sound. Even the crew sensed something unnatural. The boy lay awake below, whispering prayers, while the two older hands drank in silence, unwilling to meet my eyes. The captain and I stood side by side on deck. Neither of us spoke, but we both knew we were waiting. And then, as though summoned by our dread, the sound came, oars dipping, slow and deliberate. A call rose from the dark. "Schooner, ahoy!" But now it was hardly a voice at all. It was hoarse, wet, thick with something unspeakable. The captain's hand gripped the rail. "We hear you," he called. His voice cracked despite his effort. The reply floated across the water, mournful and trembling. "Yes, it is I. The last time I will speak to you." We held our breath. The confession spilled forth. Broken, urgent. My beloved is with me. She rests now, but soon she will rest forever. She no longer walks. Her body bends, twisted. Her skin is gray upon gray. And yet, she still whispers my name, even as her tongue falters. She is no longer what she was, but she is mine, and too am hers, until the end. He paused, the silence aching. We had spoken of leaving, of pushing off into the sea, to let the waves take us. But no, we chose to remain, to vanish here, in the place that claimed us, to spread no further blight, to harm no soul but our own. That is why I feared the light. That is why I dared not draw near. For if you saw us, if you truly saw us, you would curse the day your schooner drifted into this mist. I shuddered, though I could not look away from the gray void where the sound came from. The voice continued, faltering like a candle guttering out. "We prayed again tonight. Not for life, not for deliverance, only for peace. Only that God may see what love endured even here. That he may take our souls. Though our bodies are no longer fit to offer, we go together, always together." The oars dipped again, closer now. A faint shape moved through the mist, a shadow rocking on the water. My pulse pounded, and then the dawn came. A single ray of sunlight pierced the fog, dull and red, striking the boat as it passed a dozen yards from our beam. I saw. It was no man who rowed. Not any longer. The figure hunched between the oars was gray, nodding, sponge-like. The arms were fused to the wood, moving not with muscle but with the pull of growth that had claimed them. The body sagged forward, formless and unnatural, each motion sending ripples across its soft, heaving mass. And beside it, something slumped low in the boat. A figure once human, now shrouded in folds of fungus. Her head bowed, her hair gone, her face nodding rhythmically with each stroke of the oars. They did not look at us. Perhaps they could not. The oars moved without pause. The boat drifted through the pale beam, then slipped back into the gray mist. And from that mist, for the last time, came the voice. "God bless you. Goodbye, goodbye." The words broke on the final breath, dissolving into silence. We stood frozen, hearts pounding. The boat was gone. The sea lay still, the mist rolling and shifting as though nothing had passed. Only the memory remained, the memory of two voices, two souls swallowed by something neither storm nor hunger, but worse, the slow erasure of humanity itself. The sun rose higher, scattering the mist in fragments of light. Yet I felt no warmth. The captain stood rigid, his face pale. Finally, he said, "Best we never speak of this to the others. Let them believe it was dream or madness." I nodded numbly, though I knew better. It was no dream. We had been given a gift, or perhaps a curse, to bear witness to a love that endured even as the flesh rotted away. And in that moment, I understood the true horror, not the fungus, not the transformation, but the love that clung stubbornly through it all. Love that refused to let go, even when it should have. Love that made monsters of them both, because neither could face the end alone. Days later, when the wind returned, we sailed from that place. The mist thinned, the sea opened, and the memory retreated behind us. But it never left me. At night, I still hear it, that throaty call drifting across the water. Schooner, ahoy! And in my dreams, I see them rowing into the dawn, their bodies nodding gently with each stroke, their voices calling out blessings even as the last of their humanity slipped away. Closing reflection. What can one take from such a story? Is it a parable of love so strong it clings even as the body decays? Or is it a warning that devotion, unchecked, can bind us to horrors we should never endure? Perhaps both. I know only this. When I heard that voice, I felt pity greater than fear. And yet, when I saw what remained, I knew pity was all that was left to give. Call to the audience. That is the story of the voices we heard beyond the mist. Now I leave it to you. What do you think this tale says about violence and injustice in life? Was their suffering a punishment for human weakness, or a random cruelty of nature? Do you see love in their endurance or folly in their refusal to let go? Share your thoughts in the comments. Take a stand. Speak honestly. Because stories like this linger not only for the horror, but for the questions they force us to ask about what it means to be human, and what it means to lose that humanity.